The last time someone raised a glass, they probably thought they were just having a drink. Beer, wine, whiskey, whatever it was, it felt like something modern. Something made in breweries, vineyards, factories, bars, and restaurants. But that simple act is older than almost everything we call civilization. It is older than writing, older than cities, older than money, older than farming. And in a strange way, it may even be older than humans themselves. Because the story of alcohol does not begin with the first bottle of wine or the first ancient brewery. It begins around 10 million years ago, on a forest floor in Africa, with a small primate reaching down to pick up a piece of fruit that had fallen from a tree and stayed there a little too long. That fruit was starting to rot, but it was also starting to ferment. The sugars inside it were breaking down. Yeast was working through the fruit, and tiny amounts of ethanol were being produced naturally. The primate did not know any of that. It did not understand chemistry. It did not know what fermentation was. It only knew one thing. That fruit smelled strong, tasted sweet, and made it feel different. In 2014, a biologist at UC Berkeley named Robert Dudley published a book called The Drunken Monkey. His argument was that our attraction to alcohol may go far deeper than culture. It may go back to the ancient survival habits of primates. In the wild, the smell of ethanol could help an animal find ripe fruit. If fruit was fermenting, it usually meant there were sugars inside it. And for a hungry primate, sugar meant energy. So over millions of years, our ancestors may not have just tolerated alcohol. They may have learned to look for it. That means by the time ancient humans appeared, the attraction to fermented fruit may have already been built into us. Long before anyone invented wine, long before anyone brewed beer, the taste for alcohol may have already been waiting inside the human story. And that raises a question. If alcohol began as a signal for food, when did humans stop finding it by accident and start making it on purpose? The answer takes us to a cave near Haifa, Israel. In 2018, archaeologists were excavating Rakafet Cave, a site used by a group called the Natufians around 13,000 years ago. The Natufians lived at a turning point in human history. They were not fully farmers yet. They still hunted animals and gathered wild plants, but they were beginning to settle in certain places for longer periods of time. Inside the cave, archaeologists found stone mortars carved directly into the bedrock. These were not small tools someone could easily carry away. These were fixed into the cave itself. When researchers analyzed the residue left inside them, they found traces of wheat and barley. But the grain had not simply been crushed. It had been soaked, germinated, and fermented. That means people were brewing beer in a cave around 13,000 years ago. And here is what makes that so important. These people had not invented agriculture yet. They were not growing fields of barley. They were collecting wild grain by hand. They did not build farms first and then discover alcohol later. They were making beer before farming had fully begun. So think about that for a moment. What if alcohol was not something humans created after civilization? What if alcohol was one of the reasons civilization started moving in the first place? For a long time, the story seemed obvious. Humans settled down, started farming, built villages, grew grain, and then eventually discovered fermentation. First came agriculture, then came alcohol. But Rakafet Cave suggests the order may not have been that simple. The Natufians were still hunter-gatherers, and yet they were already making beer. That means brewing was important enough for people to gather wild grain, process it, and create something far beyond ordinary food. If you were living 13,000 years ago and had to collect every grain by hand, what would make you spend that much effort on a drink? Was it taste? Was it ritual? Was it celebration? Or was alcohol already doing something that food alone could not do? About 1,000 years later, something even larger appeared in southeastern Turkey. The site is called Göbekli Tepe. It is one of the most mysterious places in early human history. Massive stone pillars, some weighing more than 10 tons, were arranged in circles and carved with animals. These were not random stones. They were carefully shaped, moved, placed, and decorated. And the strangest part is this. Göbekli Tepe was built before farming was fully established in that region, before pottery, before cities, before permanent homes as we understand them. The people who built it were still hunter-gatherers. For years, archaeologists struggled with the same question. Why would people who did not live in one fixed city organize the labor needed to move giant stones, carve them, and place them on a hill? What could bring scattered groups together for a project that difficult? Then researchers found large stone vessels at the site. When they tested residues from them, they found signs connected to fermented grain. In other words, people may have been brewing there, not tiny personal amounts. Large quantities, enough for gatherings, enough for feasts, enough for groups coming together from different places. That changes the way we imagine the site. Maybe Göbekli Tepe was not a home. Maybe it was a gathering place, a ritual center, a place where people traveled, worked, celebrated, and drank together. And if that is true, then alcohol may have helped do something extremely powerful. It may have helped gather strangers. It may have helped organize labor. It may have helped turn separate bands of people into larger communities. This is where one of the biggest debates in archaeology begins. Why did humans start farming? The usual answer is food. People needed more stable supplies, so they began growing crops. But an archaeologist and biomolecular researcher named Patrick McGovern has argued for something more surprising. He has spent decades studying ancient alcohol, and one of his ideas is that humans may not have started farming only for bread. They may have started farming for beer. And the argument is not as strange as it sounds. Bread requires grinding, kneading, shaping, and baking. It takes control, time, and technique. Beer can happen more easily. Grain gets soaked. It begins to germinate. Sugars develop. Yeast begins working. Fermentation follows. In some ways, beer is not harder than bread. It may even have been more attractive. Because beer was not just calories. It changed mood. It brought people together. It became part of ritual, feasting, and social life. So maybe the desire to drink was just as powerful as the desire to eat. Maybe stronger. Would people really start planting grain just to make bread? Or would they be even more motivated if that grain could bring a whole community together around a drink? By 7000 BC, the evidence becomes more precise. In a Neolithic village called Jiahu, in central China, archaeologists found pottery jars containing the residue of an ancient fermented drink. The ingredients were not simple. The drink was made from rice, honey, grapes, and hawthorn berries. Chemical analysis confirmed that these ingredients had been fermented together. That makes it one of the oldest confirmed alcoholic recipes in the world. And it was not crude. It was not just fruit left in a pot by accident. It was a blend. Different ingredients were chosen and combined. Whoever made it understood that certain plants, sugars, and flavors could work together. This was not random fermentation anymore. This was a recipe. By this point, humans were no longer just discovering alcohol. They were designing it. From there, alcohol became bigger than a drink. It became part of civilization. By the time ancient Egypt rose along the Nile, beer was woven into daily life so deeply that it is almost impossible to separate Egyptian society from it. Beer was not something people only drank for fun. Workers drank it. Priests offered it. Doctors prescribed it. Families made it. The dead were buried with it. And pyramid workers were paid with it. The laborers who built the pyramids received daily beer rations, sometimes estimated at around 4 to 5 liters a day. That was part of their salary. Not coins, not just grain, beer. And it actually made sense. The Nile was the center of Egyptian life, but drinking untreated water could be risky. Beer, because of the brewing process, was often safer than plain water. It also provided calories and nutrients. For someone working in desert heat, moving stone, hauling materials, and burning energy all day, beer was not just a drink. It was fuel, it was hydration, it was food, it was part of survival. If you were dragging stone blocks under the Egyptian sun, and someone offered you plain unsafe water or a thick, calorie-rich beer ration, which one would you choose? For those workers, beer was not a luxury. It was lunch in a cup. And then there was the religious side. The Egyptians believed beer had divine importance. It was connected to gods, offerings, rituals, and the afterlife. Osiris was associated with agriculture and renewal, and beer became part of the sacred world around grain, fertility, and life. Beer appeared in temple offerings. It appeared in burial rituals. It appeared in medical prescriptions. Doctors mixed herbs into beer and gave it to patients for different illnesses, from stomach problems to infections. So one drink was doing the job of a paycheck, a water source, a meal, a medicine, and a prayer, all from the same cup. That is what makes alcohol so different from almost every other human invention. It was never just one thing. It was food and ritual, medicine and celebration, payment and poison, community and danger, sacred and ordinary at the same time. So here is the full picture. Around 10 million years ago, our primate ancestors may have been drawn to fermented fruit because it helped them find energy-rich food. Around 13,000 years ago, humans were deliberately brewing beer in caves before full agriculture had even begun. Around 12,000 years ago, people may have been gathering at massive ritual sites like Göbekli Tepe, possibly brewing fermented grain for feasts and ceremonies. By 7000 BC, people in China had created complex alcoholic recipes using rice, honey, grapes, and hawthorn berries. By 5,000 years ago, entire civilizations were using alcohol as payment: food, medicine, ritual, and daily nourishment. Alcohol did not simply appear after humans built civilization. There is a real possibility that alcohol helped humans build civilization. It may have helped bring people together. It may have helped turn gatherings into rituals. It may have made grain valuable enough to plant. It may have helped strangers work together, celebrate together, and become something larger than separate wandering groups. Every time someone drinks alcohol today, they are participating in a story that began long before bars, bottles, laws, religions, or written language. The cups changed, the ingredients improved, the recipes became more advanced, the rituals became more formal. But the impulse may be ancient. The same pull that brought a small primate to fermented fruit on a forest floor may still be somewhere inside the human brain. We just learned how to control it. We learned how to grow it, we learned how to brew it, we learned how to turn accident into recipe, recipe into ritual, and ritual into civilization. And that is the strange truth. Alcohol is not just something humans drink. It may be one of the things that helped make us human.